During the first few days of the investigation into Karmein's kidnapping, police focused on a number of leads. The first being the writing scrawled on the car of the Chan family. They concluded that the person who had done it was right-handed. They also concluded that there was nothing substantiating the claims made. John Chan was not a drug dealer, nor did he have known connections with the criminal underworld. Like the previous crimes, this was likely another attempt to mislead police. Knowing that Karmein was likely carried by the perpetrator for at least 300 metres, they canvassed the residence to see if anyone had seen a man with a girl in and around the time of her disappearance. No one saw anything. With no firm leads, other than the descriptions given by her sisters, her mother Phyllis made an impassioned appeal to the man responsible for taking her daughter.
Please, release my daughter!
The kidnapper didn't respond, and as days and then weeks passed, police and family feared the worst. Too much time had passed relative to the return of the other two girls. Roadblocks were set up in areas Karmein frequented. On May 14th, a Tuesday, police stopped and briefly questioned motorists on Main Street in Eltham. Karmein would get off at a bus stop in the area on her way home from school, and they wanted to know if people who lived in or passed through the area had seen anything suspicious or notable previous to her kidnapping. Flyers were sent to 1.4 million homes throughout Victoria, as well as parts of New South Wales and Southern Australia. Billboards were erected in prominent areas throughout Melbourne, and a second public appeal, in written form, was made by Phyllis Chan to the kidnapper. Her plea went as follows. To the man who has my daughter Karmein, I beg you to release my daughter Karmein immediately. I am longing for her safe return every minute of the day. I love her very, very much. I am willing to offer my life in exchange for Karmein's release. Karmein's sisters Karen and Carly miss her very much. They had trusted you on the night of the 13th of April. They had cooperated with you because you were calm and you looked kind. You had promised them that after you were gone, their sister would open the door for them. You have broken your promise. They were very upset. They blamed themselves for trusting you and not helping Karmein. They feel very guilty now. Karen's birthday is at the end of May, and Carly's birthday is in June. Both girls say they want nothing but Karmein for their birthday present. Please send Karmein back immediately. God bless you. Thank you very much. Love from Phyllis. In a state of desperation, they sent another letter seeking private contact with the man responsible. It was a coded letter requiring the presence of Karmein for decipherment. Time passed by, and Karmein's parents continued to run their family business while caring for their two young daughters. They sought answers, but didn't expect to get them. But those answers arrived, at least some of them, nearly a year to the day after the abduction. On the 9th of April 1992, a man walking his dog near a state electricity site in Edgars Creek, Thomastown, about 12 miles from Temple Stowe, noticed a human skull close to the creek. Police were called, and what was a quiet, largely forsaken area bustled with activity. It wasn't long before other bones began to turn up in a shallow grave. The cause of death was apparent to all. The skull possessed 3 gunshot wounds, and they quickly confirmed they were the remains of 13-year-old Karmein. Detective Inspector Sprague, at a press conference, had this to say: "It is horrific. For a child to be killed in that fashion is just incomprehensible. We believe he cannot control the desire to act out his urges. It's like an addiction, and he will not stop until he is caught." Although John and Phyllis may not hear the laughter of their daughter again, they can now say goodbye to Karmein and put her soul to rest, as she deserves. The family will now have the opportunity to start rebuilding their lives. Police and family have suggested that the killing may have taken place because Karmein had seen her kidnapper. They believe this based on what Mr. Cruel had said to another one of his victims.
"My freedom is more important than your life."
Knowing that they had a serial rapist, kidnapper, and now a murderer, the police set up a task force called Operation Spectrum, led by Detective Inspector David Sprague. Though the kidnap of Karmein had one obvious difference, police were sure that the man responsible had also sexually assaulted the unknown girl in Lower Plenty, as well as kidnapping both Sharon Wills and Nicola Linus. This theory has been questioned by some in subsequent years, but it seems apparent that the man is the same. It was therefore important to use the information provided by Sharon and Nicola. They had been able to give police a number of details we did not discuss last week. These details involved the place where they were kept during their captivity. This information was released on the 27th of January 1993. Both said that the residence they were brought to had a driveway on the right-hand side of the house. Nicola said she went up one step on the way into the house and covered a distance of 10 steps after leaving the car. She was barefoot and could feel concrete under her feet. One of the investigators, Colin McLaren, gave further information in a book he wrote about the case. It read as follows: "On her first morning, she heard the 10 o'clock news. The next news she listened to was at 11. She then amazed us by revealing that during this hour, she heard and counted 11 aircraft flying overhead. She believed 9 of them were jets, and the other 2 aircraft were smaller. She said the aircraft were all flying from the same direction, at varying times in the hour, descending on a flight path that moved across her body. But the aircraft eventually changed course, banking 90 degrees, then flying in a line from her head to her toe, before fading away. We now had a firm belief that the safe house where Nikki had been held was near an airport flight path. We turned to the head air traffic controller at Tullamarine International Airport. The air traffic controller was able to tell them that there was only one aircraft approach open on that particular morning, laneway number 2, approaching from the northeast towards Tullamarine. Investigators then asked him if the approaching plane ran straight. He answered, "It does for a while, then it banks hard left, then into Tullamarine." They then asked how many planes landed on that day and what type of planes they were. He responded, "For that hour, there were only approach aircraft, not departures. We did 9 jets and 2 smaller aircraft." Police therefore had a good idea of where the girls were taken. Every house in the Essendon and Kaler area were scrutinised from the outside, and houses were listed as of interest based on the information provided by Sharon Wills and Nicola Linus. The 2 girls were also able to give the police details of the room they were held in. Sharon believes the room was the second room on the right on entry into the house. The carpet was beige cream and the curtains were peachy coloured and full length. There was a double bed in the room, and it had a peachy, verging on orange headboard. The duvet was white, and there was a peach-orange lamp base, crowned by a lemon lampshade, with thin white vertical stripes. There was also black-brown bedside tables on each side of the bed. The walls were light-coloured, and there was a large window on the right side of the bed. A camera tripod was located at the bottom of the bed, which was likely used for filming his victims. The left bedside table had a radio on it. Lastly, there was a black sheet covering a cabinet or bookcase, which was probably covering identifiable items. There was also a number of personality traits noted by the victims, which we touched on last week. He was calm, and Sharon even went so far as to describe him as kind. One of the two girls at the house also said, and I quote, "He appeared to be acting out a fantasy, like he was married to me. He showed this by the affection he showed to me, and how chummy he was to me." Police also had a profile created by the FBI. It was created soon after Karmein's abduction, on the 24th of April, 1991. The profile is quite detailed. He likely lived or worked in close proximity to his first and last known attacks, Lower Plenty and Temple Stowe. He may be a teacher or someone working within a school. This is indicated by his request that Nicola take a school uniform with her. The attacks also took place during or near the commencement of school holidays. He will appear to be someone who takes a keen interest in the well-being of young people around him, and may well have been given recognition for his efforts in the form of awards. He likely has a collection of homemade pornography. He is a practical individual with steady employment, and is more than likely regarded as a good neighbour who is polite, quiet, introverted, but involved in community projects. If he has a partner, they will have been absent during the assaults and kidnappings, but will be aware of his dysfunctional sexual habits. Those close to him may have noticed a change in behaviour after the attacks. For example, he may have used alcohol, turned to religion, missed work, or seemed distant and preoccupied. He may well be in a job that allows him to travel freely around the Melbourne area. With the profile and information relating to both the external and internal features of the property, police were able to conduct 30,000 house searches in a number of suburbs. 73 people were arrested. However, nothing concrete came to the fore, and Operation Spectrum was shelved in January of 1994. In the preceding years, theories abounded, and a lot of people focused in on the profession of Mr. Cruel. Some, including the police, focused in on the fact that both Nicola Linus and Karmein Chan went to the same school, Presbyterian Ladies' College. Staff members were interviewed, but nothing transpired. They then looked further afield. Some 600 teachers were interviewed. Though a lot is made of the link with Presbyterian Ladies' College, it must also be said that of the 4 girls who were attacked by Mr. Cruel, 2 of them were primary school students, while the last 2 were in high school. It's therefore necessary to find another connection between the girls which explains this. The fact that the attacks and abductions took place during or close to school holidays is certainly interesting. Some have touted the possibility that he was someone involved in sports. Others have speculated that he could have been one of the following: a bus driver, a volunteer, a travelling salesman, a photographer, a policeman, a doctor, or someone involved in forensics. The last 3 professions have repeatedly came up in the conversation. A number of detectives on the case have touted the possibility. This is due to his seemingly detailed knowledge of forensics. He went to great lengths to destroy any physical evidence linking him to the attacks. He bathed the girls and clipped their nails, and disposed of the original clothes that the victims were kidnapped in. When releasing one of his victims, he said the following:
"Go to a house with a light on and tell them who you are. You'll be taken to a hospital and they'll test you. You'll be examined by a police surgeon. They'll be looking for evidence to link me to you, and they won't find anything."
It does seem to indicate a procedural knowledge, but as others have said, it is information which can be garnered from TV, books, and newspapers. One compelling theory has been presented and is up for all to read on a website. A link to that website can be found down below. This theory focuses on the idea that Mr. Cruel was an electrician who worked as a lineman. We were going to cover it in this video, however, it's too detailed and the video would run for too long. But here is an overview. Copper wiring was used to tie up Sharon Will's parents. It was a difficult material to obtain at the time, but someone working in the electricity industry would have had access to it. Both Sharon and Nicola were released in close proximity to electricity substations. Nicola was left right beside one, and Carmen's body was found beside power lines which had recently been updated, meaning no one would notice disturbed ground. Geographically, all the residences of the girls are in close proximity to areas frequented by people in this trade. The author of the piece makes reference to the knot used by the gloved kidnapper. It was tied effectively and may well indicate a propensity to use gloves while performing actions which others may find difficult. There is a wealth of theories for you to explore, but we must move on and look at some of the suspects related to the case. The police had plenty of them. In April 2016, the Herald Sun's journalist Keith Moore revealed the existence of the Sierra files. It was a dossier compiled by the FBI which highlighted 7 suspects they believed could be Mr. Cruel. These 7 suspects could not be eliminated by Victoria Police. Only one of the 7 is publicly known. The most well known of the 7 is Dr. Brian Allen Elkner. He is a former university professor with a number of convictions relating to sex offences. During an interview with Keith Moore, he stated that he was the prime suspect in the case, but denied he had any involvement. He has stated to police that he was at his brother's wedding during one of the attacks. Elkner was a French literature professor at the University of Melbourne. He was given a 10-year sentence in 1974 for rape, 3 counts of indecent assault, and attempted rape and assault. His crimes took place at the victims' homes between 1972 and 1974. These victims, which included a 15-year-old girl, were all tied up, threatened with a knife, and assaulted. He was released in 1979 and lived in Hampton, a place which witnessed a number of attacks linked by some members of law enforcement to Mr. Cruel. Unable to return to lecturing, he made a living as a freelance writer and was known to have been an avid runner who took part in marathons. It's known that he moved to a suburb of Melbourne called Thornbury in 1985, and a number of attacks did take place in this area subsequent to his arrival. Detectives searched his house during the investigation and found a knife and balaclava in his attic. He was questioned for 12 hours and was believed to be the most likely candidate for Mr. Cruel in the eyes of Operation Spectrum's lead detective, David Spragg. The names of the other 6 suspects have never been released, but details have been given. They simply relate to the occupations they had at the time, their age during the attacks, and what they are currently doing. You will find a link in the descriptions detailing these 6. No information is provided as to why these 6 were considered potential suspects. Other suspects have emerged in later years. For example, Robert Keith Knight. Knight was convicted of kidnapping and sexually assaulting two 12-year-old girls in 1998. The two assaults were separated by 16 years. The first took place in 1980 and the other occurred in 1996. Many have suggested it is unlikely that a person like Knight went 16 years without committing similar crimes in the intervening years. He also fit the profile in a number of ways. He was a volunteer youth worker. Like Mr. Cruel, he took pictures of the girls he assaulted. He was released from prison in 2009 and began collecting a number of graphic images and was subsequently arrested. While awaiting trial, he committed suicide by jumping from a second-story prison walkway. A member of Operation Spectrum, Detective Chris O'Connor, was the man who arrested Knight and believes he was responsible for many more attacks, but he doesn't believe he was Mr. Cruel. Another potential suspect has been put forward by a detective, Ron Iddles, who was a member of the investigation. He was interviewed in November of 2020 and gave information which hadn't been known up until then. Once again, we will put a link to that video down below. He stated that a criminal who was dying from cancer informed him that Mr. Cruel was a man who frequented the Chan's restaurant, and Karmein may have recognised him. Iddle says that the information he received sheds light on why Mr. Cruel's crimes came to an end after the kidnapping of Karmein. The criminal who gave the information said the man responsible was a relatively successful businessman who died in 1992. He lived in Eltham, very close to the attacks, and it is said that his garage had been converted into a bedroom and bathroom, similar to the one drawn by one of the girls. The man was known to police, and his picture was shown to the parents of Karmein, but neither could identify him. In some ways, it seems that the police had too many suspects, not too few. I hope that the girls who survived these awful experiences were able to go on and create fulfilling lives, in spite of the horrible things they had to go through. When it comes to Karmein, there's nothing that can be said other than a young, outgoing, highly intelligent girl with plans for the future had everything taken away from her, so that a man, unable to curtail his desires, could live these desires out. As for this man, we can only speculate as to why the crimes came to an end in 1991. Did he die? Did he end up in prison for other crimes? Did he move elsewhere? Or was he able to force himself to stop after committing the ultimate misdeed, the killing of an innocent child? If anyone has information on the case, the number for Crime Stoppers is 1-800-333-000, and there is a reward of 300,000 Australian dollars for any information leading to a conviction. Once again, thanks to everyone for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like, comment, share and subscribe to Mystery Scope. Until the next time, take care.